So once again, we're talking about freedom this week, freedom part 2. And last week we were discussing that freedom is kind of like this double-edged sword. Because on one hand, freedom is like a core essential value to all of us as human beings. We all want to make our own choices. We all want to be able to worship in the way that we want to worship. We all want to be free for our own pursuit of happiness. That was the whole big 4th of July, coming off the 4th of July, talking about freedom. Very, very important to us. But on the other side of the coin, on the other side of that double-edged sword, we as humans can really struggle with that freedom at times. Because sometimes we take that freedom to a whole other level. To a whole other level where our ego wants to take charge and wants to be in control, and sometimes wants to go as far as in our own way, thinking that we are God, we are the divine. It has to be our way. It has to be the way that we want it. And we're going to make sure that it happens that way no matter what. Last week we talked about that this is really the nature of all addictions. All addictions are just these ways that we're always rescuing ourselves because we think that we know best how to take care of ourselves. And we are going to do that in whatever way suits us because we know best and we don't care who it's going to hurt, who it's going to affect, even when it's us. And unfortunately, for so many of us, it's gotten to a point where it had gotten so unmanageable that we're finally brought to our knees and we have this spiritual awakening. So, one of the ways that we do that, one of the ways that we have this spiritual awakening, one of the ways that we stay in tune with what are the right ways to be in relationship with ourselves, with others, and with the divine is through our spiritual practices. So last week, the very first spiritual practice that we spoke about is meditation. And we talked about that meditation is this basic way of focusing on what it is that we want to focus in on. Because as human beings, with this monkey mind that we have, it's just our human nature to always be drifting off from what it is that we're supposed to be focusing on. And really, any meditation, no matter what it is really just that practice of whether you're following your breath, whether you're following a piece of music, whether you're following guided meditation. It's really all about just when you're noticing that you're drifting off, you just gently bring yourself back to the moment where you can focus. So it's really this incredible tool for connecting with ourselves and being in the moment so that we can then connect. All right, that brings us up to this morning. So part 2 is that part of the freedom that we've been given, and let's admit it, sometimes that freedom is a little tough, you know? Sometimes, you know, because we have this free choice, and it's in our nature to kind of do what we want and to want to try to be in charge and in control, sometimes we're not always doing the right thing. But along with that freedom, there are also all of these spiritual resources that are always available to us. Spiritual resources that are within ourselves. You know, sometimes I refer to that as the wise, loving higher self in us. Sometimes we talk about it as that unique divinity that's within each and every one of us. A very common term that we use for that here is the Holy Spirit that we sang of, you know, in the miracle song, that's there right inside of us, that divine spark that's in us. It's not a God that's outside of us. It's a God that's right here inside of us. We don't have to speak to some deity that's up in heaven. We don't need some priest or some clergy person to help us to speak to that divinity. That's right in here, like Francesco Rinaldi. It's in there. It's in there. So, and we have these spiritual practices that help us to do that. So, one of the spiritual practices that I'm going to talk about with you today is what Carl Jung calls active imagination. Over the years in my development of spirituality and in my desire to be a healer and a channel for the divine, you know, I've basically not stopped going to school, studying, you know, a lot of different methodologies of spirituality and healing. One of the schools that I went to was a program that was called Integrated Kabbalistic Healing. It basically has to do with the belief that, you know, we have God in us. And if we are in relationship with God in all of the ways that we need to be, we're in balance and harmony, and all is good and all is well. But when that starts to break down, you know, and we're not in relationship with the divine in the way that we're supposed to be, that's when there's this breakdown. Emotionally, physically, so on and so forth. It's all about restoring that balance, which once again is what spiritual practices are all about. And one of the things that he taught us over and over again in terms of developing our psychic abilities and our abilities to connect with spirit is that one of the most core essential parts of that is to be willing to use our imagination. He would say over and over again that imagination is the gateway through which we're able to have those connections. It's kind of like this natural gift that's been given to us, this ability to imagine, to not just be here in this concrete world, but to be able to use this imagine that allows us to be able to connect. So, one of the very first things that I'm going to do at this point is the meditation portion of the service, where we will be using essentially our imagination to have you connect with one of your spirit guides. So, let's talk about spirit guides. So, spirit guides can take many forms and shapes. You know, for many Native Americans and Native American culture, you know, they talk about spirit guides being totem animals. Very often they'll take the form of some animal that will come. In Catholicism, they're big on angels, you know, having guardian angels. So, in this experience, your imagination, quote unquote, is going to be choosing and experiencing what spirit guide is going to be coming to you. We're saying imagination, but this doesn't mean that we've imagined it. It doesn't mean that it's not real. It means that this is the gateway through which we're traveling to get here today. Okay? So, in this active imagination, when the time comes for you to speak to your spirit guide, you might have questions that you want to ask. You might have things that you want to say. Use your imagination to do this any way that you want. Okay? I'm going to be giving you some basic instructions just as some kind of form to try to help you to get here. But by all means, listen to that voice within and take this in any direction that you want. Any questions before we begin? Okay. So just begin by focusing in on your breath. And with each and every breath, allow yourself to become more and more relaxed. With each exhalation, allow yourself to release all tensions, cares, concerns, and worries. With each breath, you move deeper and deeper within yourself to that place where you and the divine are always one. So I'd like you to imagine yourself in a favorite place somewhere out in nature. Just see and feel and experience this place in as much detail as possible. You notice that there's a path not too far from you in the distance. It's a beautiful, clear path that you feel very drawn to. And you allow yourself to move towards this path, towards this place of clarity. You begin walking on this path, taking in all of the scenery, all of the aromas, all of the sounds. And at some point, you notice that there's an entry into the earth that feels familiar and safe to you. It might even appear as some place that you know in ordinary reality, like a cave, a well, a spring, a hollow tree. Or any opening that holds some particular fascination for you, or where you just intuitively sense clear spiritual energy. And when you're ready, I want to invite you to enter the opening. And immediately you find yourself in a tunnel or hallway or chute that feels very inviting. Now, once again, using all of your senses, be fully present here. And make your way to the end of this tunnel or hallway or chute, where you'll find a doorway. This doorway may look whimsical or stately or simple, but whatever the case, you know that it's going to lead you into a magical realm. And I want to invite you now to pass through this doorway. And I want you to explore the landscape that you see before you. as completely as possible. And when you're ready, I want you to set your intention to call upon one of your spiritual guides to come and be with you there. Be open to any form that this may take. He or she may appear as a human, an animal, an object, or something out in late nature like a tree or a flower, or a force like the wind. Ask the question when the spiritual guide appears to you. Ask the question, what is your name, and are you one of my spiritual guides? Only when you have received an answer to both of those questions, and this being or energy or force has made clear that he or she or it is one of your spiritual guides, allow yourself to enter into a relationship with this force, with this entity, with this being. Allow yourself to ask any questions that you might have in your heart, any concerns. Just allow this relationship to unfold. When you've asked the questions that you want to ask and receive the answers that you're seeking, I'd like you to make arrangements with this being, this energy, this force, to meet again. And I'd like you to agree on a ritual through which you can easily have that happen. It can be the same process that we've gone through today, or anything else that the two of you agree on. Once that's worked out, say, until we meet again, to your spiritual guide. And begin to prepare back to the room where we're sitting. As you begin to move back, you follow the same path as this descent, but the pace is quicker now. As you feel the excitement and all the energy flowing through you. Return through the doorway, through the tunnel or hallway or chute, Notice any details about this place and making a mental note of them, so that it will be easier to return anytime that you wish. And eventually, through the opening in the earth, back to that spiritual path where you feel the sunshine and the refreshing breeze of this earthly plane on you. And when you're ready, slowly, gently, in your own time, at your own pace, continue along the path and then back to this room where we are all gathered.